So here we are on a beautiful spring day. Looks like it's going to stick around for a few days. And probably like you, I'm out in my garden here trying to get everything done for the spring. There's lots of stuff to do. We've got all this debris to clean up. Now, many of you are probably asking, can you just dig this all into the ground? And I'd say in the fall you could have done that so it had a chance to decompose over the winter. But this spring, since we don't want to dig it into the ground, we'll put it in the compost pile and turn it into compost so we can use it later. But first, before we get to the fun part of planting, we've got a lot of work to do in getting rid of all these tomato cages, pulling up all the fencing, the irrigation system, raking off all the debris, and then we can start on the soil prep, which is the key ingredient for this year's even better vegetable garden. So let's get busy on that. We've got these drip lines out of the way, so we're not going to cut through those with our shovel, but I've noticed in this garden that there are a number of weeds that have come up from last year, and a little weed prevention now goes a long way later. Digging some of this stuff up, like some of the grass from last year that creeped into the garden, getting that out of the way. I'm noticing here there's a little elm tree that's come up. Let's get that puppy out of there because it's just going to get bigger and harder to pull. Look at that. It's just going to get harder to pull later. So get them out early, get the dead plants pulled up, and then we'll rake this all off and we can start on some more soil prep, getting some compost and the like dug in. So now what we're going to do is we're going to spread some compost. But what I'd like to do first is to talk a little bit about tool prep. After the winter, you want to look at your tools and see how they're doing. I like to make sure that they're nice and clean, and if you've had any rust build up over the winter months, you can just take some steel wool, a steel wool pad, and some motor oil, some WD-40, some navel jelly, and just kind of clean them off. It doesn't have to be pristine. It's never going to be pristine once you've used these things, but you want to keep them in as good a shape as possible on your digging forks and so forth. On digging tools like spades and shovels, a nice sharp edge down here is really important to cut through roots, get weeds out and so forth. Make it easy on yourself. With a nice sharp blade, it's a lot easier digging than if it's a dull blade, a lot less effort with a sharp blade. And so I like to have a little metal file with me. So if I'm starting to feel like my blade is a little dull, I can just come in here and touch it up. You want a bevel on the front side of the blade of about 45 degrees. Doesn't have to be razor sharp because it's just going to get blunted right away, but to just touch it up once in a while, and that'll get you a nice sharp blade back again. And the nice thing about this sort of a tool and this one here is it's stainless steel, doesn't rust, so you don't have to worry about cleaning that off. All right, let's spread this stuff out, a nice 3 or 4 inch layer over this whole thing, even over the perennial area. We won't dig it into the perennial area because there are obviously live plants growing there already, but they can benefit from this top layer of compost. Let's get busy. We've got all our compost dug in as deeply as possible, 8 to 10 inches if you can. That would be better, even 12 inches deep if you can. If you've got a nice long digging spade or fork, that will do the job for you. Get it thoroughly mixed with your existing soil and then just level it out. Now I wanted you to notice the difference between how full this bed is now. It's above the timbers. That's how much we've added and fluffed up the soil compared to what we started with, which was like this. Now by the end of the summer, this will probably have all settled back down, look very similar to this again, which brings back to the importance of why you need to do this every year, to fluff up that soil, get the organic matter in there, and get a lot of oxygen in the soil to feed your microbes. Because this is a step you don't want to skimp on. You don't want to use cheap compost, you don't want to use cheap manures. You want to put something in this soil that's going to last, because your root system is everything on your vegetables. Without a good solid root system, you're not going to have big tomatoes, you're not going to have great cucumbers or beans. So don't skimp on this step. This is also the time where you could be adding some fertilizer to the soil before you plant, especially if you're going to be using organic fertilizers like, say the Happy Frog tomato vegetable food. Here's some Happy Frog all-purpose. And the reason I say organic is because organics take a long time to to start to release. They need the microbes in the soil to help decompose the fertilizer to release the nutrients to the plant. So I'd put it down early before you plant. And it's real easy to do. I don't mind holding on to it because it is organic. It's not going to hurt you. And just scatter it out here like chicken feed all around the soil here. And if you wanted to afterwards, you don't have to do this, but afterwards you could take a rake and just rake it, scratch it into the surface of the soil, and call it good. And now you're ready to start planting things like lettuce and radishes and spinach and potatoes and onions, all those nice cool season crops that like this cool spring weather. The last thing I wanted to show you here was if you wanted to put out some season extenders, if you wanted to plant your tomatoes extra early before the last frost date, there are some products out there. This one happens to be a product called a season extender. It's a series of tubes that we're going to fill with water, and it creates a teepee of water, and that water heats up during the day, releases heat at night, protects your warm season crops inside down to about 16 degrees. So that means you can plant your peppers and your tomatoes or your warm season crops as much as, 4 or 5 weeks earlier than normal, which really gives you a jump start on the season, and you'll be harvesting earlier in the summer. Because let's face it, our nights are cool all summer long, and those warm season crops just don't grow as fast as we'd like them to. So let's get busy filling this puppy up. Ta-da! All right. So now in about 10 days, you're going to be able to take your tomatoes and so forth out of the greenhouse or from the garden center, reach down in here and plant your tomato in here, and this will protect it from snow and wind and hail and all those bad things that happen every once in a while in the spring. I would say that if it's gonna freeze, if it's gonna snow, come out here with a clothespin and just close the top of this together so it's protected for the night, and then open it back up in the day when the weather gets better. So that pretty much finishes up fixing this garden up and getting it ready for planting this spring. Now there's other projects in the garden that need to go on this spring before it gets hot. And one of those things is taking care of our trees and shrubs, and I believe MJ is doing just that.
In spring season, we always think about the maintenance we have to do in our yards, but preventative control can be a huge step to having a successful garden. This week's Dig In product of the week is Orthomax Tree and Shrub Insect Control. The product can be easily used on both your evergreen trees as well as your deciduous trees. Simply hook it to the hose and spray from the trunk of the tree all the way out to the drip line, otherwise known as the edge of the branches. Orthomax Tree and Shrub Insect Control makes for a beautiful, easy garden all season long.